Alright guys, the Volvo PV. Let's see what we can do with this beauty. This, to me, is one of the most beautiful cars coming out of Sweden. The Volvo PV, I think it has some really cool, unique features to the 50s and the 60s, and it's kind of cool to compare this style of European styling compared to the big American styling of the time with the muscle cars and all of that. And fun fact, my grandfather actually used to have one of these back in Finland. My mom is born in Finland. And he was, the legend has it that he was quite popular in the neighborhood cruising around in his beloved Volvo PV. And my mom told me that her and her twin sister used to sit back here. Let's see if we can sketch two kids back here having the time of their lives, looking back at the rear window of the wintry Finnish countryside as they were driving down dusty roads. Anyway, what we want to do with this design, I want to keep the main elements pretty much the whole shape of the car. So think of this as a kind of almost like a form study. I want to keep the form and focus on the form of the car and work on the details. So I want to modernize it as we did with the E30. We're going to remove these trim pieces right here, take them off right there. We're going to remove this fender and this weird exhaust going down here as well. We're going to change the wheels, of course, and make them classy but yet modern. So that's what we're gonna do with the wheels, and I'm gonna keep this whole section here. I want to keep that as is. Going to keep the hood as it is and work on the details such as the chrome pieces and the trim, and also some design features of these fenders here, because I love these fenders. It's very typical for this time, this era in car design. I'm getting a lot of questions on what actually goes into one of these renders. So I want to show you step by step the details of, or the steps that I like to take when I create something like this. So this is the first step here. I'm trying to remove the big trim pieces that I don't want in the car. So you see that the bumper here disappears right here. And I'm also trying to work on the fenders and define them more than make them more pronounced and maybe a little bit more sharp, because in today's world we have a lot of cars that have some sort of sharp edge on them. So we can implement that while still keeping the round shape of the PV. We can implement that in some certain parts of the car, and I choose to do that on the fenders here. Next step is I wanted to make the window bigger. So to me this is kind of small, and I wanted to make it just a little bit bigger, so I just blew it up to fill this form better. This seems, we have the problem that I had here was that this C-pillar here is kind of thick compared to the A-pillar. I mean, it's normal for cars like this to have that, but at the same time I wanted to keep a nice clean line here with almost the same thickness going around, and that means that I had to make the windows a little bit bigger than they were, and you can see the difference here. Next step, working on the roof of this car, make it part of the rest of the shading and not have it stick out. So basically I went over the whole car and reshaded the whole thing just to make it more it's like you have, if you go into a paint shop and you're repainting your car, sometimes you can see some differences in the shade. So I don't want to have that. I don't want to have any of the original image left on the car, so I just went over it and did the airbrush myself on top of it. But I'm gonna stop right here. This is kind of how I start a sketch, and now we're gonna jump into the video. So I'm gonna show you from this point on how we continued all the way to the final result. So as you know, I like to start on pen and paper just to get the proportions down and try to figure out the basic shapes of whatever car I'm going to sketch. In this case I'm using some toned paper. The reason for that is because I wanted to have some cool highlights, which I'm gonna add as a final touch to this quick sketch with my morning coffee. I'm using alcohol-based markers. Not alcohol-based coffee, alcohol-based markers. And the reason for that is because I want to be able to blend the markers, and that's easier done with markers that are alcohol-based. It doesn't really matter what brand of marker you're using. If you want to do this yourself, you can get whatever brand you want. Start with 2 or 3 markers and just try to blend them and have some fun. And after this, we're gonna jump into Photoshop and get started with the main model of this video, which is gonna happen right about now. So we're actually joining this Photoshop render halfway through almost. I had some issues. I thought I was recording the whole video, and then I stopped for a quick break, and I noticed that nothing had recorded, which was kinda frustrating, but you know, things happen, technical stuff. So this is after about 20 minutes. This is 20 minutes in, and what I've done is I showed you the layers in the beginning, and that's pretty much where I stopped, where I started this recording again after the last layer that I showed you. So I'm working on some shading here. Same thing here. It's very simple, the way I like to work. I like to just use the airbrush as much as I can. And the reason I'm using the airbrush is because it gives me very smooth transitions between colors. And I can decide whether I want it to be a sharp reflection, like here in the window I have a sharp reflection. I just use a sharp eraser to do that. And after this, I'm gonna go in and erase the details that I don't want, such as the windscreen wipers right here. I don't want them visible, so I'm gonna remove them by just painting over them with the background color. Very simple. Adding some highlights here as well to the chrome. I want to keep the chrome, I want to keep it classy. At the same time, I want to make it modern looking. And I talked about that earlier. I think the main feature of this PV render is the fenders that have a completely different design to them than the original. I added some sharpness to them to make it look more modern. The wheels, same thing there. I wanted to keep it classy. I wanted to keep it, you know, in in line with the time period of the car. So 50s, 60s. These are some what are they called? Wire wheels, I guess they're called. Just have to put them in there, copy paste find whatever wheels you want. If you want to do this yourself, I just find wheels that I want and copy and paste them into Photoshop, and then adjust the color correction to make it look like they're actually part of the same image and within the same lighting. This is all Photoshop stuff that you can probably just Google how to do this, the technical part of it. And I also want to add these white walls to the tires, because I think it looks so good, and I think some cars should actually have this, bring it back and have some cool white walls. I don't know why they don't really exist anymore. I think they look cool on certain vehicles, and especially on an old PV. So the idea with all these renders that I'm doing is I'm rendering them as if I owned the car and could do anything I wanted to the car, this is what they would look like. So the 3 Series, that's how I would definitely want it to look. Some beefy old 3 Series, it would be super cool to have. And this PV though, I don't want to make it beefy, because that's not what it's about. It's not a angry BMW. This is a classy, stylish old Volvo. But at the same time, we can make it look modern, and we can make some upgrades to it. I don't like all the trim parts that I showed you earlier, which is why I removed all of them. The chrome lists and so on that went on the door and the fenders. Those can be removed. I don't care about that. But I would keep this chrome around the window for sure, because that's just adds to the style of this car. And I want to keep as I did before, I just kept the chrome grille as well. So I think it's cool that the chrome is actually showing up somewhere else on the car, as well as on the wheels. You can have those chrome if you want to do that, or they can be steel. Right here, I'm just adding some final touches to this design. This, as you know, is my favorite part, is to go in and make the car shine. And this is obviously a very shiny paint job, I would say. Otherwise I wouldn't make all these details and highlights and burn points. It all depends on what kind of paint you want on the car. If it's supposed to be a matte paint, you can't have a lot of reflections on it. The reflections need to be more subtle and need to be mixed into each other, so you don't have very sharp reflections in a matte paint. But since I want this to be very shiny, it's very easy to create shininess in the car all you gotta do is think about where your light source is. So where is the light actually coming from? There has to be a light source because you can see the car. If we have 0 light sources, the image would be completely black. So you gotta think of where is the light coming from. Usually you can just think of it as the sky, so it's coming from the top. And that means that all surfaces that are facing upwards and all edges that are facing towards that light source, they need to have some light reflections on them and some highlights. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I also added a overlay layer to make the front fender, to have the focal point on the front fender, which is closest to the viewpoint. So if you think of this as a camera looking at this car, the closest part to the camera is the left front fender. So I want to put some focus on that. That's exactly what I did there with the overlay image. Final touch, of course, you gotta sign your work. And then I'm gonna compare these two to show you before and after. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I enjoyed making it. This was a lot of fun, an old Swedish classic. And before I finish off, I want to add some highlights to the door because I forgot to do that. And that's about it. I hope to see you in the next one. If you like this kind of videos, please hit the like button. That means a lot to me. If you're new to the channel, I have a lot of these redesign videos and also a lot of sketching tutorials to help you get started with sketching if that's something you want to do. So you can check those out right here on my channel. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. I'm the Sketch Monkey, and I hope you have a fantastic day. I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.